Paul Renner wants to be governor of Florida. He's a smart guy. He's a veteran. He went to Davidson, and he went to the University of Florida Law School. Paul Renner, welcome to The Truth.
Great to be with you, John.
Well, thank you for joining us today. Campaigning is hard, isn't it?
It's all day, every day, 7 days a week, but it's a lot of fun too. You get to see a lot of corners of the state you didn't visit before and meet people all over this great state.
So where do you make your home in Florida?
Palm Coast, so about an hour south of Jacksonville, more specifically between St. Augustine and Daytona.
Well, that's not Space Coast, but it's awfully close, right?
About an hour and change from the Space Coast. If you're going to Titusville, at least a little farther, Brevard's a long county, which is really the Space Coast. So, but to the Space Center, probably about an hour and 15 minutes.
Well, I have a good friend who was born and raised in Florida. He happens to have liked it the way that it was, but he and I talk about politics just about every day. And he has an interesting perspective on Florida, and namely that it is a very complex state, and it is a center for industry. It is a center for space exploration. It has some of the best colleges and universities in the country. Obviously, marine life and the environment is very important to all people in Florida. You got to have a lot on the ball. You've got to have a lot of savvy to be able to run this $1.3 trillion economy known as Florida. Are you up to the job?
Well, I think I'm in this field. I'm the only one up to the job. If you just look at background experience, leading up to running something like that, 20 years in the military, served in 2 wars as a Navy commander to age 23 in Operation Desert Storm, 20 years later in Afghanistan, leadership throughout that, leadership under pressure as a state prosecutor, trying habitual and violent habitual offenders. I've been a business owner, partner in a business, and leading the Florida House of Representatives as speaker, about 500 employees in that kind of executive role in the legislative branch, but really kind of an executive management type role. Nobody in this race comes anywhere close in terms of being ready to step in and do this job. And then, when you go to results, that's a whole another reason to vote for us, because we, according to the governor, had the 2 most successful sessions when I was running the state legislature, the House in Florida history, really building the free state of Florida. And so if you want somebody who can protect and strengthen it, you go to the architect who built it.
How's your relationship with DeSantis?
Good.
Why hasn't he not endorsed you?
No, he hasn't, and that's a little bit of a frustration, but it is what it is, and he's obviously not weighed in for Byron Donalds, unlike everybody else in the political class. The grassroots, though, as I think he knows well, is in a different place. They agree with what the governor said, is that Byron's never been here for any of the wins here in the free state of Florida. He was not part of it. He's passed 2 bills in 5 years in Congress and missed 150 plus votes. So he's not the kind of guy that would look anything like a Ron DeSantis as governor. And so the governor realizes that. He stayed out to date. I don't know that he'll get in this race, but he's not going to be getting in for Byron Donalds.
Well, did it surprise you that President Trump endorsed Byron Donalds so early?
I know Byron has been working on this for 10 years. And so at least 5 years with the president in Congress, speaking out for the president on Fox News, and all those times he's missing votes, but he's never missed an interview. So I think he's done everything kind of to follow the playbook of trying to get the president's endorsement and campaigning with him. And frankly, the president in his defense, doesn't know the rest of us nearly as well as he would know Byron as a result of that. But I've heard rumors that maybe he regrets the decision, but he hasn't shown that in his public statements, at least. And so here we are. I think people want to make their own decision. I talk to Trump clubs all the time who say, I love the president, but I'm not voting for that guy. I'm voting for you. So we're encouraged by where we see things at the grassroots level. And if that plays out among the voting public at large, we'll win this race.
Well, I'm sort of surprised that a guy from Brooklyn, New York can come to Florida and win a congressional seat and then run for governor. Now, I happen to like Byron Donalds as a person, but I think that his CV is very weak and does not qualify him to run a state with a $1.3 trillion economy and the complexity that this state offers. And so I will not be voting for him. And I am giving you a very hard look. Are you concerned about the direction our country is going in right now?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, your show, the truth is really right at the center of what's happening. We have people on the left that simply their philosophy rejects all truth, like Pontius Pilate, in responding to Jesus and said, "What is truth?" They can't define what a woman is, and that's why they can't accept that there's. We can argue over what the truth is, but we shouldn't argue that there is one when it comes to boys and girls and things that are so basic to humanity. But they've rejected all truth. And as a result, you see the hot mess that these blue states are, but people are buying it. It can go again to make a biblical reference. It's back to the Garden of Eden that left, promises that all your wildest dreams can come true. We can all be our own gods and set our own truth and have everything that you imagine in paradise here on earth. And that's just not how real life works. Conservatives are more realistic and practical, and understand that, we need checks and balances. We need a constitutional republic to make sure we don't have tyranny. We need a free market where everybody has value and gets to decide what product or service they're going to buy at what price, and these types of things, that where freedom just simply works. And we have a whole philosophy that rejects that totally today. And so, yeah, I'm very concerned about the direction of the country. And, Franklin talked about a rising and setting sun, and that the sun was rising on the new republic. But the question is, what about the next 250 years? Is our sun rising or setting on America? And I think that will be determined by, whether we follow the principles that brought us here.
Well, I study this stuff every single day of my life, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And I have been engaged and involved in politics since I was 10 years old, when I put my first bumper sticker on for Richard Nixon in 1959. So I feel like I have a little insight. And I can tell you that for the first time in my life, I am really concerned about the future of our country. And I wish I had it with me. It's on my desk in the other room. But I drew a map with all the influences that I feel like, not influences, but pressure and adversarial pressure that is being placed on our country. And when you talk about men and women's sports, I think it is a fiction. I don't think anybody in their right mind, I think someone would really have to be certifiably crazy to make any kind of an intellectual argument that men should be allowed to play sports in a woman's sport with women. Not only is it dangerous, but the thing that puzzles me, some of the very people that you would think would be defending women's rights are the ones advocating to let men play in women's sports. Trans men, obviously, is what we're talking about. But I'm just wondering if it's not a fiction that has been forced on our agenda by a foreign adversary, or maybe from internally, to divide this country apart. And, I've worked in the inner city in Atlanta, where your birthplace, for the last 20 years in the community of English Avenue. It is the worst zip code in America for any social ailment that you care to mention: unemployment, poverty, hunger, diabetes, HIV. You name the social ill, it is there. And we were greeted so warmly by the people that live there, but the leadership stiff-armed us. And it opened my eyes. And I had a friend, Ivory Young, who was a city councilman for that area. And it really bothered me. I said, Councilman, I don't understand. Why are these people giving us such a hard time when we're here to help? He said, John, you don't really understand? I said, no, I don't. He said, they are the poverty pimps. You are threatening their power base and their economy that they thrive on. And so it opened my eyes to a broader picture that I think that the leadership is keeping us divided, because I've got great relationships with 6,000 Black people in the English Avenue community, many of whom I know by first name and vice versa. But the leadership seems to be determined to keep black and white tension going. Is men and women's sports part and parcel of that?
Well, first of all, I agree with you that countries like China and others do want to destroy this country. They
Yeah.
do have influence operations here. They do fund some of these left-wing organizations and indirectly campaigns for office. You just elected a guy in Michigan, the Democrats did, who's one of his main supporters says we deserve 9/11, who's a Islamist extremist, and yet we have, I think, in my opinion, as a result of a loss of faith and a result of a loss of belief in capital T truth, you have kind of everybody for themselves, everybody that's just gunning to get what they can get, and a lot of grift. Grift is widespread, and the people you're describing are all about making money for themselves and not actually solving the problems that their organization probably in their mission statement is set out to fix. Because if it gets fixed, they're out of their money train. Their honey pot goes away, and it's very, very disappointing. That we don't look around and see leaders who are offering their lives, their fortune, their sacred honor to the good of the country, the good of the community. And I'm running in part because I don't see that in Byron Donalds. I don't see someone who is about helping other people. He's about helping himself. He's part of that grift machine. And I think we're going to pay a price if he's the nominee. And so I'm here to run and put our message forward to win the vote, win your vote, and win others that are listening on August 18th in the primary, so that we can have somebody that has actually spent their whole life in dedication to the community and to the military, as a prosecutor, as a Speaker of the House, building the free state of Florida. You want people like that. I'm not the only one, but you got to have people like that in these top positions, or we're going to be in deep, deep trouble.
It's delicious, it's nutritious, and best of all, no dishes. We're talking about Bogey's Beef Jerky, of course. Premium craft beef jerky that's taken off at the most prominent golf courses and resorts across America. Made for the turn, the road, or whenever you need a bold, protein-packed snack, Bogey's delivers the rich flavor and that premium chew every time. From smoky heat to Pineapple Express, try some Bogey's beef. They've got a flavor for every player. Bogey's Beef Jerky, tee it up, tear it up, and enjoy. So, as I mentioned, I've been in and around politics my whole life. I was chairman of the Georgia Republican Foundation, the money machine for the party in the early 90s. I've run for office twice myself, once for state senate, then for attorney general with President Trump's endorsement in 2022. And I've I didn't get elected, I'm sorry to say, either time, but all the jobs that I've looked at in government, I think the one that would have the least appeal to me would be Speaker of the House of a state legislature. I mean, I can't imagine what it must be like to have to survive in that environment. You've got everybody after you, the Democrats, the special interest, your own party at times. I mean, how do you make that system work and get anything done?
Focus on the mission. As a veteran, it's about staying laser focused and not letting personality, ego, arrogance, the politics in politics that destroys legislative chambers. Just look at Congress, where they're so dysfunctional. All they do is fight with each other and raise money to run for their next election. But by really focusing in, now that's hurt me in the governor's race, and I wasn't, doing live streaming on social media to try to build my name ID like somebody else in the race.
Well, you're catching up now.
Yeah, I'm catching up now. That's right.
You're on the truth. We're going to launch you.
That's right. But I was focused on doing the job, and we did the job. We delivered more conservative wins. I say that when we were in charge, conservatives won every battle. And so if you're looking around for who's qualified, who's got the actual receipts to prove that I can deliver on issues like affordability, ending public corruption, human trafficking, eliminating property taxes in the case of affordability, lowering insurance rates and electric rates. I've got specific plans in our contract with Florida for each and every one of those things, and I will get them done. And you can just look at my past history. We did get them done, the things that we set out to do when I was Speaker. But you're right. It's look, it's 120 in the House and in Florida and 40 in the Senate. Everybody's got to agree to get each and every bill. They got to pass it by majorities in both chambers, and the governor's got to sign it. You're threading a needle, and we did that over and over again with incredible results. If you just look back at what was accomplished during those 2 years, it's really the bulk of what people call the DeSantis legacy.
Well, I can tell you, I've heard really good things about those years that you were leading the House of Representatives. This last session was, I don't know, calling it dysfunctional, would that be too strong a term?
No, it wouldn't. And affordability is the number one issue, and they did virtually nothing. They threw together something for property taxes in 3 days after a year and a half of talking about it. That could have been much better, both on benefits, like my plan is to truly eliminate taxes for homestead property, and also have some backup plan for police and fire and so forth that my plan does have. They have no plan. They have no backup plan. So it's a half-baked measure. I know people will vote for it because they're desperate right now, and it's unfortunate because people really, really need this help and this relief from property taxes. And I supported what the governor was proposing. He didn't get what he wanted, and so I think this legislature has been a colossal failure on many fronts.
Well, it certainly seems that way, and that's sort of what the undercurrent and the murmurs seem to be saying, which I think bodes well for you, actually, because you did not have that experience. How do you prevent yourself from becoming paranoid when you're in that kind of a serious leadership role and you've got people coming after, biting at, nipping at your heels all the time, and people trying to probably undo you? How do you keep focused on the prize and not allow the noise to get to you?
Well, it's just that you focus on the prize. And I would say from my military experience, I remember going to law school and everybody was freaking out about their law school exams. I'm thinking, well, nobody's shooting at us. I've had mortars up overhead and that kind of thing. And so we're being, in the case of Desert Storm, being, from here to, across my room here to a mine, free floating mine that our EOD guys were destroying and swimming back to the boat. We'd pull them back in the boat, and if something happened, it happened to us, not our ship a mile away. And so when you have experiences like that, and I had others similar to that, the more stress that comes, the more I get quiet and focused. And I just continue to do that, where the lobbyists and the naysayers and the media and the people that you're right are trying to undo you behind your back. You just stay focused on the prize. I was blessed to have a good partner in the Senate who was much more moderate than I was, but we worked very well together. We just treated each other, in good faith and communicated. And as a result, had a good partner there to get things through the Senate that we got through for her in the House, and a good relationship with the governor to get these things done and not let, everybody in the zoo, turn it into a zoo, but stay focused on results. And we had good members in sponsoring these bills that really, put forward the effort. But it starts with leadership, and you get the most, like a good head football coach, you get the most out of players you can, and the people that are there to put them in places where they can really succeed, and encourage them, inspire them. That's what good leadership's all about. And we did that, and the results, prove the point.
Outside the border states, I can't think of another state that probably has more influx of immigration than Florida does. I can tell you that it highly offends me that the Biden administration and the Obama administration just opened the doors and let people come in. And Obama very overtly stated that he felt that he wanted to change the character of America. And I think this is one of the pillars of his plan. And it seems like that to some degree they are winning. Does it astound you that we cannot pass the SAVE Act? And what does that say about John Thune and the other Republicans in the U.S. Senate?
Yeah, it really is astounding. And I worry very much about this election because, what would motivate Republicans? Here in Florida, we talked about our legislative failures these last 2 years after I left, and what's happening in Congress where they can't get anything done. And now one of them wants a promotion to governor here in the state of Florida. If they can't get that done, I think a lot of Republicans are going to sit home, unfortunately. And I don't know what to say about it. You got to, again, have leaders that say, we're not here for your reelection because you don't want to vote for this, whatever. We're here to pass legislation to improve our country, our security in the case of election security, or to make the lives of people better when it comes to affordability, whatever the issue is. And if you can't get on board with principles that you campaign for in every single election, then maybe you should just go home and not not give in to the interest of those individual members who, for whatever reason, don't want to take a vote on this. Republican members, and that just to me is like is very very disappointing.
It kind of conveys to me that they're in on it. I can't imagine that a Republican senator would not vote for it unless he feels like doing so would cost him possibly his seat in the Senate. And maybe he's from a state with a lot of immigrants, a lot of illegals.
Yeah, or a Democrat state like a Susan Collins,
Right.
that thinks she's going to lose her race, and so that's more important than the SAVE Act, as it's named, to save our election integrity across the country. And there's nothing more important. If we don't have free and fair elections, then we don't have a country. We don't have really a constitutional republic anymore. And so it's critical. Part of my 100-day contract with Florida is to make sure we pass additional measures to make Florida the gold standard in the nation for election integrity.
Well, it's fun to talk about inside baseball, but let's talk about the issues in the time that we've got remaining. What do you consider to be the top 3 issues, or 4, whatever, that you're campaigning on?
There's 4 big buckets in my contract with Florida, which is at voterenner.com for those who want to take a look at it. But first one is affordability. Again, we have a plan to eliminate homestead property taxes. We have benefits and help for small businesses and renters as well. A bunch of savings that pay for that, as well as some replacement taxes on tourists and outside speculators like private equity that have bought up homes and turned them into rentals, that kind of thing. We have specific plans to bring down homeowners insurance by 10 to 20%. That I won't go into in the time we have, but it will work. They're measurable, not exciting, but they work. They're practical steps we can take right now in those first 100 days, as well as reforming how electrical utilities make money. They're very regulated, and we can change that in a way that they do well when we do well, not based on how much they spend on these solar fields that are dotting and scarring our landscape. That's number 1. Number 2 is safety. That means going after public corruption, ending human trafficking, shortening death penalty appeals to 3 years so families don't grow old and die before they ever see justice for their loved one. Average stay on death row in Florida is over 30 years for the worst of the worst. Health freedom is number 3, and along with that is the health of our environment. I'm a big health freedom advocate, and we're going to make sure that that's front and center during my 8 years as governor. And we're going to protect our natural resources in Everglades, Springs, all that. Make sure we leave it better than we found it. And then lastly is freedom, keeping it free, which is election integrity, AI Bill of Rights, Second Amendment, and leaning into strengthening the Second Amendment and pushing back against the red and green threat of China and Islam, which threaten our country. And some of that goes to stopping immigration from those countries, for example, and not allowing enclaves to develop, which are developing. You saw what happened in Michigan, and now you're seeing it in Tampa with a large growth of people that are going to ultimately demand that we assimilate to them. And the same with China. China's an enemy. No land purchases. We did that when I was speaker. We're going to make sure they're not in our schools and our universities. We're going to root that threat out wherever it is, but they're an active threat to undermine the United States. China is, and we have to have somebody as a former intel officer who gets it and knows what to do to stop it.
So how are you going to break out? It seems like there are 4 legitimate candidates. You, Byron Donalds, the former, I guess he still is the lieutenant governor appointed. And then James Fishback, this young guy who seemingly has come out of nowhere. How do you evaluate his chances, and what's your assessment of him?
Well, he's a social media phenomenon. He's somebody that's very, very good at social media, but you have to ask the question of the things I lay out for people. What is the background and experience that would qualify him in any way, shape, or form to be the next governor? What has he done in politics before showing up to run? What is his vision? He's got some things that he and I actually agree on, not having H-1B visas, for example, no AI data centers, these hyperscale data centers. We have some points of agreement, but having an agenda, and I'm reminded of Vivek Ramaswamy because it seems a similar comparison. It kind of came out of nowhere, said everything we believe in, just a little louder, a little more, social media savvy. But the question is there any there? And if they could at least run a mutual fund, and run a successful company, I just don't think there's any reason to believe that he's ready to step into the role of governor any more than the lieutenant governor or Byron Donalds. I mean, I've had voters come up and I said, why are you here at this event? Well, I've been looking at the candidates, and you're actually the only one that's qualified. Had the president picked someone that I thought was qualified to actually be our governor, I might be supporting them. But that's the blessing of that endorsement, is I happen to be the only one truly that has got the qualifications to go in and pick up where Ron DeSantis is leaving off. Those are big shoes to fill, but I can fill them.
How much money have you been able to raise so far?
We're between 7 and 8 million, I think, right now, which sounds like a lot of money. In Florida, it's not. It's enough to get our message out, but not nearly enough to, smother people with it 5, 6, 7 times that a lot of people say a lot of voters need, to hear it and hear it and hear it again. But we're continuing to sprint to the finish line. And shows like yours, and we're doing radio shows, as I mentioned, in English, Spanish. I don't speak any other languages, but we're trying to reach voters everywhere they are. And here we're in Miami today. We'll be back in Central Florida. We did a panhandle run and hit a lot of little map dots that we're trying to reach people where they are. We've been to all 67 counties in Florida. That's how you win on the grassroots. And so we're doing that with a combination of other things like mail and advertising and text messages, you name it.
I've watched Byron Donalds' television ad. It feels to me, and maybe this is just me, I don't know, but it reinforces for me what you and I have been talking about and his lack of a CV. I mean, being able to shoot a 3-pointer to me is not qualifications to be governor of Florida. So I'm not sure who he's trying to reach or what the thought process was behind that. But it just left me feeling very empty. And I'm not trying to be mean or biased, but I'm just being honest about the way it comes across to me.
Well, I think you've hit on the core reason why Donalds doesn't make any sense and voters should reject him is he can't answer the why question. I have. Why me, not the others? He doesn't have an answer. That's why he's shooting baskets on TV. That's why he won't show up for debates, because if he were confronted side by side with me, he has no shot. When voters that know me and hear him come overwhelmingly to us. We win the informed voter. It's the uninformed voter that he's hoping to just, people will shrug their shoulders and say, I guess I'm voting for Byron Donalds. That's not a very good reason just because you've heard his name. And you've pointed out exactly the problem is he's got no answer to the why question. Why you? Why should you be governor? Why do you want to run for governor? These basic questions that every voter wants and deserves an answer to. I have an answer, and it's a good answer. It's a compelling answer. He has none.
So you don't like the H-1B visa?
Well, no, as governor, I'm not going to allow him in state contracts or at state employment. I think it's been abused because I have heard too many stories of Americans that, train a couple guys and then they just get fired and they get replaced by those guys they trained. We need to make sure that our immigration system works for us. There's a right way and wrong way to do it. But everything I've heard, I am hearing multiple instances of abuse. There may be legitimate uses for it, but here as governor of Florida, putting Florida first, I want to make sure kids coming out of college have a job and their jobs aren't being replaced by people that don't belong here, or in the case of H-1Bs, that they're coming over and replacing Florida residents in those jobs. And so I want to make sure we protect our citizens and encourage them to get those high-paying jobs that will solve the affordability problem.
Well, maybe rather than doing away with it, you could figure out a way to reform it. I don't think Elon Musk would be very, very happy to hear what you've just said.
Yeah, I can't reform it. Obviously, the federal government will decide whether we do or don't have those, or how to. I think it needs reform. I would encourage reform where.
Well, but you said you were going to eliminate them from state contracts and make it tough for people in Florida.
Yeah.
I
can't. I got to just choose what they offer me, in terms of visas. But I want to make sure we're not letting, whether it's, in that case, a legal immigrant, they're here legally on a visa, but nonetheless, if they're undercutting Florida workers, that concerns me. I want to make sure we're protecting Floridians and their jobs.
Well, it's concerning to me and kind of interesting that President Trump got elected primarily. I think the number one issue would have been immigration. And paradoxically, it may be the very thing that causes us the most heartburn in the midterms, because people don't like the way that the deportation is being conducted. It's messy. It's violent. people are losing their lives. And then you've got that little uh, factoid down in the Everglades called alligator Alcatraz, which is kind of repugnant to me, actually. I'm wondering what your thoughts are.
Well, I was asked the question, and what I said is I would do whatever we needed to do to surge capacity, but I do it better, faster, cheaper. I'm not sure Alligator Alcatraz was any of those things. We have Camp Blanding, for example, which is a large National Guard facility in my neck of the woods that was ready to go, could have been used immediately with capacity at very little cost to the taxpayers. And so, you know, I don't have whatever information the governor had or his thought process in putting it where he put it. And now it's closing, but I would have done things, you know, better, faster, cheaper to provide if we needed that surge capacity to provide it, not necessarily create a new, you know, a new place with a new name and you know, we got to be careful about you know, making it a photo op. You know, I'm all about getting things done. That's not sexy, but you want a governor who's not out there, you know, trying to be a celebrity. You're trying, you know, like Myron Donalds sees himself as a celebrity. He really does. And so that's not somebody that's necessarily going to be good at governing. You want somebody who's going to do it right.
Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up. And Paul Renner, it has been an honor and a very enjoyable half hour to be with you. And I really appreciate your coming on The Truth. I wish you well. And we will continue to follow the Florida governor's race. And that is the truth.
Thank you, John.